maybe 2 is plenty, but now I got to qualify for Kona. And then now I got to do a couple marathons. And so what happens is they 1 is no longer enough, and 2 is no longer enough. And then so they find themselves in this position of now what they are wanting from triathlon, they're not getting back. So now they feel like, oh, well, I'm just burnt out on triathlon. I'm just burnt out on the sport. No, you're not. You're just placing too much weight behind a hobby that you expect to fulfill you wholly for 24 hours a day.
Hey, Coach.
Happy Friday.
Happy Independence.
I mean, isn't this post-Independence Day?
No, it never ends.
It never ends. Well, it never ends for you because you're a bachelor. You can celebrate Independence Day every day of the year if you want to.
Oh, I know, and I do. Freedom to sleep in is at the top.
Freedom to do whatever we like. But yes, welcome. Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 282. 282. And we appreciate you letting us have a day off yesterday. Well, you really didn't have a choice. But we usually, if this is your first time listening, we usually come pretty standard every Monday and Thursday. But we'll occasionally come to you another day of the week, pending holidays or travel from races. But yeah, always twice a week. And we hope you had an awesome July 4th. Hope you got to spend a lot of time with your friends and family. Got a little bit of got some exercising or training in. And but for the most part, got to kind of re-energize yourself. And for most of you, hopefully you don't have to work today. You get a 4-day weekend and get ready to tackle the back half of the year.
Yeah, man. I was thinking about that when I was in corporate America, how big these 4-day weekends really are.
Oh, they're huge.
Huge.
And they are huge for people. I wouldn't know anything about that, but they are huge for most people. I know Allie has to work today, but she's working remotely, so it's not too terrible. But yeah, it's pretty awesome for I think most people. There is little to no work getting done today besides this action-packed 60 minutes we're about to deliver on your vacation. There is little to no work or reason for people to even go into work. So if you're at work right now and your boss is there, turn up the volume a little bit, tune in, and just let your boss know that today is a complete, utter waste of time. Yeah. Because even if people are at work, they ain't working. They're just wishing they weren't at work, which is, probably what they do Monday through Friday anyway. But
the boss, they're going through the motions.
Yeah, exactly. They're going through the motions, and everybody's counting down the clock, and people aren't scheduling meetings because mostly both of Allie's bosses are out today. So they had meetings that were canceled. So it's just kind of like, hey, you know what? If you want to waste payroll, waste payroll. But that's the world you want to live in.
That's half the secret, though. They have to. I was going through life corporate life, and it was like, I don't know. Most of us had to fake our way through and act like we were working half the time. Yeah, that's just how the corporate America kind of is set up.
Optics.
No, we need you in here.
Gotta have you got a short body that we're working hard. But yeah, we'll get back on topic.
Meanwhile, the boss is playing solitaire on his computer.
Exactly.
It's like, what?
Texting the secretary and then his wife at home. But yeah, we digress. We are back. I got a few topics today.
Right. One more thing on 4th of July.
Jeez, here
we go. If I may give a shout out to that once-a-year superstar that has all the fireworks and entertains the neighborhood until 2 a.m. They spend their whole day, and that's like their time to shine, 1 day a year.
I couldn't hate that person anymore.
It's like, really?
And listen, I know hate's a strong word. I know, but I absolutely, utterly can't stand that guy. They had their big fireworks in Chattanooga July 3rd, so Wednesday night. And here I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to get to bed at a reasonable hour. We went around, did some fun things yesterday, and got in bed a little bit later than usual. And, yep, there he was. Random Ron with his fireworks with no discernible rhythm, but just sporadic shots of probably M80s and Black Cats and all kinds of, old school 1980s fireballs he's shooting out of his Coca-Cola bottle. at his other little redneck friends with his Swiss Army knife. But
So you met some new neighbors, huh?
no, it's funny because I don't know where that was coming from because there are no houses behind us, and there are, but they're like way over the ridge, so I wouldn't know like who it was. And then I can't see anybody in our neighborhood doing it because we have a lot of older folks in our neighborhood, which I love. But
we're good people, us old people.
I love it. Good people are usually solid. And there is the one thing that I promise we'll get back on topic here in a minute, but there is one thing that I've already found that I really, really appreciate about the people in this neighborhood. They are obsessed with their landscaping in their yard. Oh, and it just it oozes greatness, and it makes me feel right at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's kind of spurring on a little bit of competition. Because there's a few, like older guys, like this is kind of where I wanted to go with some topics today, but they can't just turn the sprinkler on and then go back inside. They have some trust issues with the sprinkler. They have to observe said sprinkler doing at least 10 to 15 minutes of full rotations to make sure that it is exactly the way it should be.
It's all about coverage, man.
It is about coverage, man. And also you kind of got the spiteful neighbor who will purposefully, like, instead of maybe watering, like, I don't know, a half foot of your grass, on accident when they're trying to, because the range of the sprinkler is a little bit off, they would rather pull it back and water half their driveway and covering their car and drenching it than they would giving your lawn an extra foot of, coverage. They got to move it back. Mm-hmm. And then I got, my poor neighbor Sherry, who she's single, lives alone. I cut down her backyard early last week because she was struggling a little bit, and she walks around with her sprinkler.
Yeah, morning sprinkler walk.
And I had to kind of let her know that watering late in the afternoon is like the worst idea ever. Because she was getting home from work in like the hottest part of the day and sprinkling or watering her lawn, which is like the worst thing you can do.
A couple of reasons, but we can get into those in our agronomy podcast.
That'll be a bonus cast. It'll be Crushing Your Lawn cast, episode 1, but you'll get into that later. But yeah, so if you're listening, bonus pro tip for the day, please, for the love of all things holy, don't water your grass in the late afternoon, hottest part of the day. It's the worst thing you can possibly do for your lawn. But
about the worst thing, but
I mean, it's up there.
It's not efficient, and it's creates mold.
Mold creates fungus, and it's going to dry up and die anyway. So, triathlon, we're on it again. We appreciate you listening. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe on iTunes, and then let us know how you think about our lawn tips. And let us know how.
Thanks for the reviews. I actually went in and read some of them.
I got quite a few. Yeah. It's always good to see, and it makes us feel good about what we're doing and the people that we're reaching. And that's what the reviews do. It helps us reach out to other athletes that are looking for the podcast. Obviously, we don't have any sponsors or commercials, so we don't do it for the cash. We do it for the community. So leave a review. Tell your friends. If you have any friends, speaking of, it's a great time. If you have any friends doing Muncie 70.3, please go back in the archives and listen to our Muncie 70.3 podcast. It's probably one of our favorite podcasts that we've gotten some of the best feedback in terms of a race preview, everything from where to park, how to get there, and the race course. They did just change the actual swim course, but if you have any friends that are doing that, please share that episode. It's got some great tips on a race that you and I have done multiple times that we know a lot about, and that is coming up this next weekend. But I had a plethora of topics today, but wanted to see if you had any kind of burning desire before I hopped right on this train I've got going.
No, I'd like to hear yours.
Okay, so
I'm actually looking up what number podcast that Muncie is.
Okay, while you're digging in the archives, I'll kind of go over two that I wanted to cover, and one was we had a gentleman post in our closed Crushing Iron group. So if you're on Facebook and you want to be part of the conversation, that's kind of fueled by the podcast and from the podcast, you can always go on Facebook and search Crushing Iron Group and give that a little bit of a search, and we will let you in as long as you answer the simple question. But there was a guy, maybe late last week, maybe Thursday, or maybe actually, I keep thinking it's like Monday, but it's not. But he shared a post, so July 2nd, so I think, what's that, Tuesday? And let me just read it. It said, Okay, it's bad, and I need some guidance, direction, or support. Following this group and seeing how awesome it is, I'm starting right here. So I finished Ironman Louisville last year, my first and hopefully not my last. However, being a late season race and the cold weather that settled in right after, I live only 2 hours from the venue, and here in the Midwest it gets cold early, I completely fell off the training regimen. I signed up for a marathon in hopes that even running would keep me motivated and fit. I didn't train and had the worst race of my life. IT band issues at mile 8, walked 18.2 miles.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, ouch. But kudos to you for even sticking it. I mean,
Yeah,
I
no
guess,
kidding.
did a sprint try 2 weeks ago. Still no mojo. So my plea is this. Is there a podcast anyone has listened to that helped them out of the funk of a post-Ironman depression? I didn't think it was real, but the further I get from the race, the less motivation, more excuses I have each and every day. And it's a great thread. I mean, there's a lot of good feedback. There's a lot of good posts. But and kind of within that thread, along with some really good advice, like, finding your why, doing things fun, do some, more kind of soul searching about, what you liked and didn't like. There was, probably 5, 6, 7 other athletes in there who really kind of echoed that sentiment and there was one that really stuck out at me. And while we probably have you and I probably have a couple podcasts that kind of flirt around that topic. There was a specific race, or a specific individual who posted something that's basically like, that when I did Ironman, it kind of defined me, and that was I think another individual said, I also came down with this same disease. It's been 5 years, and I have not found the cure, at least not one that has interested me or got me interested in triathlon. And it really got me thinking, like, to kind of a broader sense of why this Ironman depression happens, and why we probably have a couple of podcasts, like I said, that kind of skirt around the topic. I'm happy to deliver today a more poignant and directed approach at why I truly believe that happens. Steps that you and we can all take to not only prevent it from happening, but hopefully getting things centered to where we kind of take a new approach to where you don't allow it to happen again. And I think this is also a good time of year to bring it up. We usually bring it up, October, November, December, when the season is basically over. But I think sometimes we forget, and you and I are guilty of this, and sometimes we forget that, most people don't have a season, or not most people. Some people don't have a season. They're still trying to find their way. I mean, I was kind of shocked to see how many people kind of commented on this thread. They're like, I'm struggling. And hopefully, maybe we can deliver a cast today that is helpful, because I know I've been there before, and I think I've got some not maybe totally unique experiences, but to kind of help people through this. But I think it'd be, hey, we do this podcast for the people, so I think it could be a good route to go today if you're cool with it.
Yeah, I'm very cool with it. I've been there, understand it pretty well, and also, we have people from around the world in different times of the season and things like that too. So, my first gut feeling on that is that a lot of people get into the sport, and especially in Ironman, and I'm speaking from experience, and I think what happens is that first one, certainly the energy and the fear factor and just the newness of it all, it really carries you a lot. It's this psychological, splint that just sort of like takes care of you and like keeps you going. And then when you get done, you realize how damn hard it is. I mean, it's very, very difficult to do an Ironman, and I think it sort of gets lumped into this like, hey, everybody's doing Ironman now. It's like the thing to do. But we forget how damn hard it is. And not only just to do it, but like to get better at it and to understand it. And as you go through this process, and like we talk about with me, it's like my 7th year or so in this process. And, things click now and then. And I just think in general, life is very hard. Everything in life is very hard until you understand it. And sometimes when you're going through your first season of Ironman, it's sort of like this newness, and you're learning all these new things and everything, and it's just sort of driving you to think about that finish line and that red carpet and all that magic that kind of encompasses finishing something so majestic. It just keeps you on a high. And then the reality is you got to go back to work the next day. It's like, oh shit.
Well, I mean, personally, that's the problem. And I think we have a whole podcast thanks around, kind of finding your why. And I think, and I listen, I can, as with pretty much every podcast we do, like the things that we share are our experiences and how we've overcome it or how we've dealt with it. And then, the successes that we've had and the pitfalls. That way, hopefully you don't have to, to go through them. We're not experts. We're just experienced through the good and the bad. And I can tell you that one of the biggest problems. And so when I hear athletes say, I'm into, I totally, I was letting these races, we let these races define us. And so many people, like I know, like say, oh, you gotta get back and find your why. Well, a couple things. Like one, like your why doesn't have to be like some earth-shattering, moving, Oscar award-winning speech. It can be something simple.
Nice.
It'd be nice, it'd be cool, but let's be honest, it's probably not. Like it could
Put it
be,
on YouTube, please.
It could be as simple as like, like I said in another cast, like you just want to look good naked. So that's a perfectly fine why. But one of the biggest things that I think that we fail to understand, that we fail to look at, and that we fail to address is why we chose it. Not why as in I love triathlon. Because I think, because honestly, we place too much blame on the sport of triathlon. And we put too much weight behind being a triathlete and what that means to us. Because the truth of the matter is that the majority of athletes get into the sport because they're searching. You're searching for something different, something unique, some kind of spark, a massive change in your life. You want to turn things around. But then a lot of athletes search for this as a reason or a source of fulfillment. And they can latch onto a triathlon, they can latch onto a race or an event or a journey. And then when it's over, if all you've done is work on triathlon, you're still left with you. I can tell you this from personal experience. Before I got sober, I spent every single waking moment of my triathlon career latching onto triathlon as a way to just basically tread water in my life and keep me. You know this. You're my best friend. You watched it. Like it honestly, we've talked about this multiple times. Like it was probably part of the reason why I didn't die. It kind of kept me afloat in a way. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily the greatest way, but it was like my life raft, in a lot of ways. And besides, like, you and Allie and maybe one or two other relationships I had, it was like, that was it. And so I think that people that maybe aren't at that extreme are finding themselves in like these midlife crisis. And so it's much easier for us as humans to say, you know what, I can change my life by taking up a hobby. And that's not the answer. So if you attack triathlon and you train for it and you buy all the gear and you commit to being an Ironman, you train, and then you let yourself down on race day or you DNF or the race doesn't go the way you want to, then you place that identity on that result or that doing it is going to change you. It's not. The event itself, the day itself doesn't change you. It's who you become along the way. And if you fail to address you and what that root problem is, then you're going to be the same person when you get done. And that oftentimes is, for a lot of people, you're still that same person that you don't like. Maybe not. And I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just saying, like, there are things about yourself that you don't like, that you're unhappy with, whether it's relationships, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your friends, whether it's your community, whether it's your job, whether it's where you live. And so you think, okay, well, all these things are going wrong, or I haven't really dealt with this, but you know what I can do? I can take up triathlon and I can pour all my energy into that because I kind of have control over it. And while it's uncomfortable, it's a level of uncomfortability that I'm okay with, because I can kind of control it. I won't let it kind of go all the way, like, looking in the mirror and addressing myself and taking those steps. But I can do triathlon, so I can buy the gear and I can be one and I can make it my profile picture, and then, oh my God, I'm still the same person. I just have a hobby.
Mm.
And that's the problem for most people. I'm not saying I'm really not trying to throw a blanket statement. But I generally believe that athletes, and I know that because I coach them. I coach athletes who struggle with these things, and that's why I think coaches have a unique responsibility in not just, pushing your athletes to perform, but pushing them to perform better. The greatest compliment a coach can ever get has nothing to do with the race. It's, you push me to be a better person. You push me to be a better husband, a better wife, a better anything, a better professional, whatever it is. That's how you should push them. And if you're only focused on this one thing, then guess what? Because we always we always like to blame triathlon, and we always like to blame Ironman. We blame somebody else, but let's be honest. The common denominator with your whole life is you. So if you look to, all these different areas of that you think need help, or that you complain about this, or I can't find this, a lot of times what it takes is like, all right, well, I signed up for Ironman. What was going on in my life? Okay, I had this, and they were all things I hated. Are those things still true? Yes. Okay, well, then maybe I should, instead of thinking that going and doing an Olympic distance race is going to all of a sudden cure it and whet my appetite, it's like, that's not really going to work. We have to work on ourselves and try and figure out the root cause, and then add in triathlon as a positive part of our life that we can give and take from it, and not just expect it to fix everything. Like it's one of those relationships that people like to get into, where they expect triathlon becoming an Ironman to change their life.
Yeah.
All you're going to do is swim, bike, and run one day, and you expect that to change your life? It's not. It's not going to change it at all. It might change your perception. It might change the way that you think things are possible. But if you didn't, put things to practice along the way to change you in a consistent manner, feeling, it's you're only going to have that kind of that euphoric, you're going to be in that infatuation part of your relationship with triathlon, where it's all great and dandy. And then you're like, wait a minute, we have to talk about like important stuff. Like, no, I just want to pretend like, we're in love, like back in your 8th grade and you're going together, everything is great. But it's not that easy. And so I think that, a lot of athletes and a lot of people, you could really figure things out by stop trying to blame triathlon, by why I can't be interested in it, or that I just can't find my mojo. That's not triathlon's responsibility. It's yours. I think we should all challenge ourselves to figure out, what is the reason why, and it might not be a good thing. And even if it's not, then okay, what can I do to change that? And then you'll probably have a better understanding about the place that triathlon can hold in your life, to where you complement it and it complements you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it's a unique problem to people in the world. I think a lot of people, whether it's striving to be sort of like your career, that becomes your life, and that doesn't, help you out. Or think about professional athletes. You hear about depression in professional athletes all the time, and they get into the NBA finals and making millions of dollars, and then they just can't find a happy place. It's a similar thing where you're staking your identity to some kind of sport or whatever. And I think it's real dangerous, especially with amateur triathletes a lot of times, is that we're kind of, like me, I can only speak from my perspective, but I do observe it a lot. It's sort of like we all have kind of this like glory day thing festering inside of us, where we just want to recapture a little bit of that,
Mm-hmm.
that what we had back in the day. And then I just do think that it's easy to forget that we're not that person back in the day, 20 or 30 years ago. And we still think we are sometimes, when we push it too far, and then we get fatigued and we get tired. And like we talk about many, many times, it's hard to be motivated without energy, or it's hard to be happy without energy. And we get into these traps. And once that mental stimulation of having that carrot out in front of you, whether it's an Olympic or an Ironman or whatever, when that goes away, it's then we kind of, like you said, you got to kind of wake up and look at yourself in the mirror and be like, all right, now what? Now what are you going to do?
Now what else can I find?
Now what else can I find? Yeah, and that's another element of it's like, yeah, it's always searching for that new spark that can lift you to that high. And that's, I think I've talked about it before. My old business partner back in the day, he was always so mellow, but he was always so just kind of content, you know? He was never excited about like these new ventures we were going on together. It's like, look at this, man. He's like, yeah, all right, okay, that's good. Let's do it. And he just had this sort of demeanor about him where I think he was kind of relatively happy with whatever was going on. And there's a lot of power in that.
There's a ton of power in that. And you bring up such a great point, because like what happens is, and you see this with athletes, and we all know them. We all know them because they're our friends. We all know them because we see them on Facebook, or we know them because it's us. In that you see athletes who gravitate and who they get what they want from Ironman or triathlon or racing or training. They get what they want for a little bit, and then what happens is the amount that they get back starts to dwindle. So you do your first one, you're like, oh, this is the greatest. Like, I could live like a king forever. This is the new me, baby. This is it. Hashtag I am finisher. This is me. This is my identity. And so it lasts a while because it's your first one, and it feels really, really powerful. And then you do another one, and you're like, this isn't going to have the same effect. I need to do 2 this year. I think I kind of need to do 3. Maybe 2 is plenty, but now I got to qualify for Kona. And then now I got to do a couple marathons. And so what happens is they start to, 1 is no longer enough, and 2 is no longer enough. And then so they find themselves in this position of now what they are wanting from triathlon, they're not getting back. So now they feel like, oh, well, I'm just burnt out on triathlon. I'm just burnt out on the sport. No, you're not. You're just placing too much weight behind a hobby that you expect to fulfill you wholly for 24 hours a day. You sleep, eat, dream, post, obsess, whatever about triathlon 24/7. And guess what? That ain't triathlon's job. Yet we place our blame on it. Oh, I'm just burnt out on it. I just can't do it anymore. And so then you have a vicious cycle of I got to train so much because I can't not do it, because then I'm just left with, just left with me. And that's not really the most fun thing for me. So I need to find something else or something greater or something more. Now I got to go do this. I got to go swim. I got to swim over the ocean and then back, and then I got to go climb Everest, and I got to come down. Then I got to go run Western States, and I got to come back and do a couple swim run events, and then I just got to do everything. So you're basically filling your life with busy work, or busy training, or busy racing. So you are so busy that you don't have to address what the most common denominator is, and it's you.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. Like, I know that it's difficult, and I know that it's hard. And I think athletes find themselves in these circumstances throughout the course of the year, and they just can't figure out how to get out of them. And I think, and while I think it's really, really, really hard, it's the same answer is always going to be us. What do I need to do? And if triathlon was the only thing in my life that was making me happy, then I'm putting all my weight behind that. So if it's taken away or I get injured, then no wonder I'm so depressed. What's gonna happen to me? And I think that we should always start with ourselves and how we can do better, and then maybe if it's really uncomfortable, fixing that, because that's all we're gonna be left with anyway. And the more pressure you put behind these events, and the more time you allocate towards obsessing over it and basically letting it wash over you and become your identity and become your label, then once that's stripped of you, or once your identity or label of yourself has not fulfilled to the amount of fulfillment that you want it to have for you, then what are you left with? Then you come to resent it. Well, I hate it. I hate triathlon. I hate that it basically couldn't fix me.
And I think that's just such an awesome point.
I just hate that it can't fix me. And again, so we go back to this blame game, and I think that's so many times we mistake burnout or lost motivation or as just disappointment that my crutch or my hobby or my sport couldn't fix me the way that I hoped it could, and now I'm just stuck again with figuring out again on my own. And I get it. It's super challenging, and you have to kind of redefine yourself. And it takes time. I mean, like, I think a lot of athletes also, I was having this discussion with an athlete who I've worked with for going on 3 years now, who just had a baby. And he was like, he raced Chattanooga 70.3, and he was like, I had a good race, but I just wasn't there. And I was like, and it was the first race both his wife and obviously his new daughter had been at. And I was like, dude, I get it. I was like, you go from being able to have triathlon as like your mistress, like you're married and like a triathlon's my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a kid, and it's like, it doesn't take just a backseat. Everything about you changes. And so you have to kind of redefine staying present and staying motivated and redefining what gets you up in the morning and what gets you amped for a race. And you almost have to focus more because you have this person there and this child or this spouse or whatever that's there that has taken all your mental energy because you want it to, and you're like, but now I can't. It's like your ability to be selfish has been taken from you. And people struggle with that. I've struggled with it. When we had Hayden, I was like, I don't want to go on these long rides anymore. I want to hang out with my son. And I think that some people find that, and if I was in the place I used to be, then it would have caused like a huge problem. Because triathlon was filling a void, and then I was like, now I don't feel guilty about it. But you also have to you have to internally and externally kind of shift your expectation based around what you're willing to use and what you're willing to give up in terms of fulfillment and expectations when it comes to racing. Because that's been the biggest battle that I know I've had since we've had Hayden and we got married and we've done all these things. Is like, I don't. It's something I don't love triathlon. Is that I'm not willing to be as selfish as I used to be, and with that selfishness came more training volume, more hours, more this because I could zone in on it. And then now that we've doing this thing, it's like, no, I'd rather get up early, or I'd rather go on a stroller run with our family, or maybe not do a focused run because I get to hang out with them, or I'd rather not go out on a 6-hour bike ride. I'd rather do this. So you have to make these. People would say they're sacrifices, but they're not. You're just shifting the way that you think about what's important to you. And so if you go take that back to how people struggle with triathlon and how they lose motivation, it's like, well, what part of it was the most important part to you? Was it the things that it added to your life, or was it that you expected it to replace something? And I think that's where the resentment or the feeling of I hate it, or I don't want to do it anymore, I'm burnt out, comes from, in that we got into that relationship thinking it was triathlon was going to give everything to me, and I was going to be great. But what it really is it hopefully is a symbiotic relationship to where it complements me and I complement it, in terms of our relationship. And that's where athletes really get into kind of a pickle, is they expect triathlon to fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like getting into it's just, listen, man, it's just like any other relationship. You get into you're in a long relationship, and you break up and you get another one, and you're like, this person's great, they're a fixer, like this is gonna fix everything. But really just taking your mind off of what the root problem was, because you're still the same person that was just in the last relationship.
Yeah.
And it all stems from your expectations of what you expected you were going to get out of it when you started. But the only thing triathlon was providing you an opportunity. And if you don't allow that and seize that moment and seize that opportunity to make changes, triathlon isn't going to change you. You're going to change yourself by being a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a two-way street. And too many times we blame the sport when we should be blaming ourselves and the expectations we had put on it.
Yeah. What's that saying? That everything's fine in moderation.
Mm-hmm.
You know that one? That seems to govern a pretty good guideline for life, you know, in general. And I can't help but think about it when you're talking like that, you know, triathlon kind of acts like an addiction. And we talk about that a lot. And it's sort of like, you know, the first time you experience it, you know, it gives you this super high, and you're like, this is the solution I've been looking for my whole life. Just like that first beer, that first time you get high or do drugs or whatever. And then all of a sudden you realize, yeah, like you said, there's really something deeper in there that's missing. I mean, if you could just, you know, as pot becomes more and more legal, if people could just have, you know, get high once in a while or whatever, that's probably cool. But then the problem is like when you keep diving deeper and deeper, which is, you know, I think all this stuff should just be, you know, available or legal or whatever, because, you know, you look back in history and even alcohol, man, that used to be a medicine when we didn't really understand it. We still don't understand it, I don't think, to large degrees. But you know what I'm saying? It's like that first time, it really does do a wonderful job of kind of changing chemistry or whatever. And I think that's what triathlon does, is once you sign up for an Ironman, and I've felt it, what it does to your brain, it kind of just takes over, and it just sort of keeps that hamster wheel moving, and you don't notice all the other crap that's going on that's bugging you, and you just kind of like, well, yeah. So it kind of comes back to moderation in a way. But how do you juggle moderation training for Ironman? You know, that's a tricky one. But like you're saying, the stroller runs and these sorts of things. That's why everybody, you know, when I'm coaching these athletes and they say, hey, sorry, I didn't get this work done today. I had a bunch of friends come in town and we went out for a nice, long, easy ride. And I'm like, awesome. You know, it's 3 months from a race. You're going to, instead of doing a 2.5 hour hard ride, and you go out and take it easy for an hour and a half with your friends. I mean, really, what is that going to matter? There's such a guilt that washes over us when we don't nail a certain workout, or I just see it all the time. I feel it. And I mean, it's taken a long time, but I'm getting better at going out and feeling my way through something. You know, and that's the other thing, right? Is like, that's the ultimate catch-22 in some ways, is like, man, I don't feel the motivation. But once you kind of get out there, it sort of pumps your blood and you start feeling better, and it feels good a lot of times to go out and do your workout.
Yeah, if you're doing it for the right reason.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to last. You know, yeah. You're doing it for the sake of you know, it's adding to your life. You're not sacrificing. Like what you said, like, reminds me of this quote that I was reading over earlier this week from the Minimalists, and it goes, he said, less than enough is depriving, more than enough is indulging, enough is that sweet spot in the middle, the place where intentionality intersects with contentment, where lust doesn't get in the way of creating something meaningful. And that is like training in a nutshell. In terms of, like, you do too little and you're depriving yourself of true performance and fitness gains, and a great part of the process. More than enough is indulging, so it's too much, so training too much, too hard. But that sweet enough is just that sweet spot in the middle where intentionality intersects with contentment, to where you're doing something intentional, and just the mere fact that you're being intentional creates allowing yourself to be content. And that relationship with yourself, not with sport, or not with the, you know, what it's trying to, like, I have a current athlete who I've taken away this athlete's watch, or not watch, but Garmin. And because this person was just obsessively looking at their watch basically 24/7, like, this athlete even admitted, you know, like the first mile they were looking at their watch like 20 times, And that was how they were determining. And so on Wednesday, they ran a run, and this athlete said, "It's really hard not knowing any kind of pace. I feel like I don't know if it was good or not. I did do a better job of bringing on and carrying hydration." That's the point. You get to a point to where you don't know if it was good or not. So you no longer are a part of that relationship. You're a bystander. You're letting your effort and your device speak to each other, and you're just standing on the sidelines waiting for them to come up with an answer, and then you are the one that has to deal with it the rest of the day. Versus, I have a lot of athletes now that write their comments, and they'll say, "I'm writing this without even looking at my results yet, but I felt really, 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 really good." That's all. What else do you need to know? Like you just told yourself what you were, but now you're letting everything else kind of interfere with it. And so I think that while a lot of those things are important, obviously it's intrinsically and internally like what we're really getting from it, and it's that balance of too much and too little. And that also goes with it kind of goes with our approach to triathlon in terms of too little is we're kind of flirting with not really being committed, so we're not going to get a lot out of it. And then you go from being too overly committed, and now we're placing so much weight and pressure and expectation upon this to where you're allowing it to define you instead of you defining you and being content with you. It's like people think, people use the phrase like, "Oh, well, they've got a drinking problem." Well, you know what? That's not really the case. Like, yeah, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I haven't drank in, will be going on 6 years in November. When I go into a gas station, like the beers and the liquor don't like jump off the wall and scream, "Robbie, you've got to drink me. Robbie, you've got to drink me." It's like, that's not how it works. The problem was always me. It was that that's how I was using alcohol to deal with it. But then once I finally started to deal with things, I was able to understand that I cannot drink alcohol because one isn't enough. Like, that's my personality. It still blows my mind that people can have like one sip of alcohol or even like one beer and that's it. It's like totally foreign to me. I still can't wrap my head around it because that's not how my brain is wired.
That's like racing a sprint a year.
Right, exactly. I'm like, I don't know how that works, but so like the more that but that's how people deal with triathlon is like, well, I can't, like, I've got to, you're doing triathlon because you can't, you're doing triathlon or you took up Ironman or you signed up for these big, huge events because there's something else going on in your life. And that's why I was drinking, because I had so many other things in my life I didn't want to deal with. I was like, I just got to keep drinking. And so one drink turned into a lot, and then it turned into like, way too many, obviously, that I couldn't function without it. And that's how people deal with triathlon in so many ways, is that they gravitate towards it because it seems like this really positive, healthy, and it is. And it can be this really positive and healthy hobby to take up, to where you can get involved with a community, you can get a coach, you can have a group, you can join this like online community of people who are doing these events and these close Facebook groups, and I can do this, and I can totally 100% ignore all the things that I'm struggling with or that I don't like, because right now I've got this thing. And then you cross the finish line and you do all these things and you go back to work, and about 3 or 4 days afterwards you find yourself being like, now what? Now I got to do another one. And if I can't do another one, then what's going to happen? And it's just, I know it's hard. Like, this isn't a how to, this isn't a how not to suck at, triathlon podcast. It's hopefully like what you can do and what you need to be focusing on to get back to where you want to go, to where you can be. Because the difficult part, I think, that we often fail to just not talk about is that the reason triathlon gets harder and harder and harder for so many people in terms of they get burnt out or they don't get motivated is because your relationship started on the wrong thing. your relationship triathlon was based around something that wasn't truly 100% healthy out of the gate. And so now you kind of have to take a step back and think, okay, do I really like it, or did I just use it to kind of fill a void? Or did I just do it because I wanted to do this? And so you kind of have to like work your way backwards and like really do some like hard work. If you really, want to do it, then you'll do it. If you don't, then maybe it was just that sport or that hobby that you use for a time being to kind of bridge the gap, but now you're still stuck with where you are. And I think that's the work you kind of have to do. And while this may sound like way too mentally and emotionally, focused for a triathlon podcast, like if you're looking at triathlon or the sport to do all these things for you, guess what? You got to do it first. And it takes a lot of work, and you have to be willing to ask yourself tough questions. But I just think you have to kind of take an overarching, view from outer space in terms of like, okay, I got in because for me, I've gone through like a million different phases. Like I got in the sport originally to lose weight, and I loved it. I was functioning like an awesome. I was doing great, and then it kind of changed and morphed into this really not healthy relationship where I was basically like, it was one of the only things in my life that I was like committed to, and not in a good way. It was defining me, and I wasn't like even being honest with it. And then I got sober, and then it became something different. Then I've had, got married and had a son, and now it's so like. And so I think what you kind of have to understand is like all your seasons of life and the things that you change, and the thing that you need and things you want, like those always change. And so your relationship with it is going to change. And if you don't allow the expectations of what the relationship you have to change, if you don't expect that to be a reality, then you're just being naive. It's like being married and expecting a child not to change your relationship. You're just totally 100% naive. And so if you just think that that's not going to change your relationship or your marriage, then what's going to happen is one day you're going to look back and think, okay, I didn't work hard on the things that I know I needed to do in order to continue to make this a successful relationship, and I neglected so much of it, and then now I can't repair it. And then you see a lot of marriages fall apart after like the first few years of having a kid, because it's like it's a whole new relationship. It's like it's hard. But it's just so hard, I think, this day and age, for people to acknowledge that things are hard and not to expect things to be easy. And I think that that's just something that we could all like do a better job of acknowledging, is that it's just freaking hard. And it's okay to like this athlete did, like this gentleman, like to post, I think it takes a lot of guts, to post in like a public, our group's a lot different than most, I think, which is great, because I think it's why people feel comfortable posting things like that. But it's like, it takes a lot of,
it does. It's hard to ask for help.
Like that. To be like, it is, man. It's just like, I don't have it all together. I just don't, And so, hey, if you do, could you help a brother out?
Right.
Like that's like the most like, humbling yet like open thing you can do, and then hopefully you get, somebody who can give you some good feedback, and like that's what it's supposed to be. It's like just being, I'm like, what, man, this shit is hard. Life is hard. Mm-hmm. Relationships are hard. Having kids are hard. Trying to just dealing with yourself every day is hard. And you just have to be able to, I think, be accountable to that and understand that like you can't do it alone, and you can't expect so much out of one thing. Because really all you're left with is like, you're left with yourself. Like that's one of the to go back, because I do that. There's a lot of similarities and analogies you can take from triathlon and addiction and recovery, but there's like, so many things that, when I first got sober, it was that you can't do it for anybody else but yourself. Like if you're doing this to stay married, or you're doing this to eventually one day, guess what? You might not be married. And if that's the case, then are you going to go back to drinking again? And So you have to do it for yourself and realize I'm doing this the way I want to do it because I know it's going to better me, and I'm also willing to do the work no matter what. No matter what, I'm going to stay sober because I know that if I don't drink, my life is always infinitely better. And you have to commit to that. And so I think that you have to, in terms of, spinning it back towards triathlon and racing and training and all these things that we like to talk about, it's like you have to always, no matter what, be able to lay your head down at night and be happy with the decisions that you made and the training that you did, or the races you signed up for, how things went, and that all falls on you. And you got to be able to ask for help. And so I think it's awesome that this person mentioned that, and that, people were willing to, chime in with really great feedback. And I think it's a good topic any time of year to kind of recenter ourselves and ask ourselves difficult questions, and ones that aren't, necessarily ones we really want to answer.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's the short version of it.
That's the short version?
Yeah, that's the short version.
No. Seriously though, man,
that's a short version.
This is something that I constantly work at, I constantly think about this because, it's like you want to tell somebody, right? Hey man, I just went out and did this or did that. And, the reality is that, most people are relatively self-centered. Is that fair to say? We have our own lives, you know, and if you're telling me that you just did something amazing, if that doesn't affect my life, like most people don't care. So your point is you got to do these things for yourself. And as I think about training more and more, I really have been trying to go into workouts with this idea that however I begin that session or whatever the case may be, I want to get to the end where I'm feeling like I want to do more.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get there and I feel like, wow, it's time to quit, but I don't want to, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's the best thing. I have to hold some in my tank. I can't always lay it down and empty the tank. So I just think it's important to keep that in mind and go about that workout, whatever the case may be, even if it doesn't necessarily line up 100% with what you're quote-unquote supposed to do. Mm-hmm. That, I have a big thing where I tell people, it's like, all right, if you got certain workout and you just aren't feeling it or whatever, just get out and start riding your bike and just see what happens, and then maybe do part of it, or at least experiment with certain parts of the workouts, or, try things, if it says go fast or push X amount of watts or whatever, push a percentage of X amount of watts at first and just see, it's just, again, I always go back to the negative split mentality, but and I've been thinking about that in terms of racing too, because think about what happens in a race is like, if you get super excited about race day, you're standing there on the shore at an Ironman and you're just jacked beyond belief, and like, hey, this is it, man, this is it. And then you jump in that water and you realize you've got 14 hours left and you're going out like a bat out of hell. That's going to probably be miserable. How can you mm-hmm. expect to finish that day and actually be like, yeah, I love this sport? Like most people get done at the end of a triathlon, or, especially an Ironman, like maybe that last minute, because you get that super rush when you come down the red carpet and all that stuff. And we talk about that, and it's real. It's the same thing. It's a microcosm of everything we're talking about, is that one moment that you get. But the whole day, I can't tell you, I've done several Ironman, and I can't tell you how many times I've gotten off that bike and gone, why did I do this again? And I've got a marathon in front of me. Mm-hmm. And so how do you change that? Like I know it's going to be difficult to wish you could keep running at the end of an Ironman. Mm-hmm. I have heard people say that though.
Yeah.
I felt so good. Yeah, it's very rare, but my point is I think that's the target in a way. If you're racing to get to Kona or to win Kona or something like that, no, you want to be able to, you want to cross that finish line with the, perfectly timed out and nothing left. But who can do that? Like what kind of superhuman And you see pros fail all the time at that kind of attempt. So I think that there's something to be said for like, hey, I can finish this race, whatever it is, a sprint, Olympic, whatever it is, and I don't have to be on the verge of like keeling over and like back down for life. You know, it's like this whole podcast reminds me of one of my favorite songs is U2's One. And the opening line of that song is it getting better or do you feel the same?
Mm.
And that just has always resonated with me so hard because, you know, it's sort of a kind of like connects to this idea of let me do something new today and that'll fire me up. And the reality is you definitely have to look inside and see what you got and figure out what's going on. Why are you getting frustrated? Frustration usually comes from putting off things that you know you should be doing.
Yep.
And a lot of times those aren't the fun things.
Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Should triathlon provide you more answers or demand you ask more questions?
I suppose I think it should be questions.
Me too.
Because
and I think
I always call it a metaphor for life a lot of, you know, and I just think there's a lot of problem solving in there.
I 100% agree. And I think that's kind of in a nutshell, like a way that you can like step back from like, you know, a 30,000 foot view and be like, all right, is triathlon answering more questions for me than it is forcing me to ask? Because I think if it's answering all your questions, then I think that relationship needs to be reworked. You know, instead of like probing you to find things out about yourself by asking yourself questions or forcing yourself into, you know, critical thinking like, am I really capable of more, you know, than I thought I was? Instead of fulfilling a predetermined result that's not really growth. You know, like that's just, again, it's just a predetermined outcome that you've scripted. Where the hell, like, where's the fun in that? Like, yeah, like, has my life been like a total, like, 100% roller coaster? Yeah. Like, are there plenty of things I would have, you know, if you'd have asked me like a million years ago, like 20 years ago to, you know, how would you want to script your life? I probably wouldn't have written in a good chunk of,
Sure.
of my pretty positive. I probably would have not written in like all of my late 20s and all of my early 30s. Probably would have wiped. But if I would have, but I also never would have been able to script the life that I have now. Never in my wildest dreams would I have given myself a shot to write the story that I have now in the chapters that I'm living right now. So if you like, I just wouldn't have. So I like, yeah, well, I would have like loved to have just like, you know, whited out and not had those chapters. If I didn't, I wouldn't be in the chapter I'm in now. And I can't imagine a better place to be in my life than where I am right now.
Mm.
And so while I would have scripted it different by the fact that it's not so, but you can't script life, and you shouldn't script triathlon and your journey within it. It should always force you to ask these questions and then figure it out and then grow and then figure out again and then realize that maybe I'm not where I thought I, you know, could be. Maybe I can go farther. Maybe I can be better. Maybe I can do more. Like that. Again, I do. I think you should be able to ask yourself more questions, because that's how we grow, and that's a way to make it a true relationship and not a selfish, you know, infatuation that we have where we just expect to get things out of it that we scripted already, and not just something that's going to, you know, consistently probe us to figure out why or what or how or when, and then do it all over again every few months, because that's how we grow.
You know, I always used to talk about when I got into triathlon how the analogy was always like it sort of broke up the rocks that were inside me. And I've been just thinking about it as you're saying that, but like, it's like, let's say you're going to put a pool in the backyard and you start digging and there's a bunch of huge boulders in there, and then you decide, okay, well, I got to break these things up and get them out of here so I can put the pool in and everything will be fine. But then it's like you spend hours and hours and days breaking up these rocks and then they're down to rubble and you're just exhausted. But now you got to get the rubble out of there. It's like we got to clean that out, man, that we're not done. It's sort of like it feels like a relief for a while and then you're like, well, the job's not over, so we still got to kind of keep going at it. And you're right, it asks questions. It forces you to ask questions, I think triathlon does in a big way because you're flirting with, being tired a lot and you got to really kind of suck it up and keep going. But the reality is I don't think that just because you're in triathlon, that doesn't mean you have to go through life being shelled.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. And if you are, that's probably a good time to start looking deep at some other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good indicator. Because it's taken over and you're just still the same.
Still the same. Well,
wow.
We're glad we could keep that surface level. And
you like talking about stuff like this. So.
I do, man. I
do too.
Listen, I think we. Do I like talking about it? Yeah, I mean, I think it's good.
Well,
I mean,
exploring stuff like that.
It's
like
not
looking for answers.
Listen, like and this has never been a podcast that has been like, listen, today we're going to give you the 14 secret training sessions to just propel you to the next greatest performance of your life. Frankly, because it's just bullshit. But what we want you to do is figure this out for yourself and do things that are going to challenge you to hopefully figure it out on your own, because there is no perfect way to do everything. And yes, like is it, swim, bike, run all the time? No, but it's hopefully setting yourself up to be in a sport that can produce your best performance. And for most athletes, the way to best performance is straight through you. And that's getting yourself to a place to where you're mentally, emotionally, and physically, and for a lot of you spiritually, in your best place. That's how you perform the best. And, if we can help center you in that way, if we can help drive you in that direction, if we can help, force you to ask the difficult questions so you can find different answers, if that's what's going to get you out the door, if that's what's going to keep this sustainable, if that's what's going to make you consistent, if that's what's going to provide you a healthy and happy atmosphere and environment to cultivate where you are and where you should be within the sport, then we're doing our job. So yeah, I do. I like talking about the intricate details of the sport that are scientific and sometimes data driven. But I think, the core of it is us, who we are as humans. We are not and shouldn't be triathletes first. We should be humans first. We should be, ourselves first, Mike and Robbie. Then we should be husbands and wives and daughters and sons and, in relationships and friends. Like that's what takes up our life. And if we can be whole with that, if we can be comfortable with that, and we can feel inspired by that, then we can perform well in these hobbies, and our hobby is triathlon. And I think that's, again, we talk about it. And I think one of the reasons why people love our podcast is that we do talk about it. And I think I'd probably argue to say we're probably one of the very few, triathlon podcasts that do dive into that part of the sport. That's because it's not comfortable for people to talk about, and most podcast hosts probably don't feel comfortable going down that road, and that's okay. We feel comfortable because we've been there, and I've been there, and I've been through every mountain and valley you can probably imagine. And if you and I can share our stories and our experiences to help you not go down that route, or hopefully make a U-turn before you get any farther, then more power to us. And that's why I love our podcast and I love our listeners. And hope you've enjoyed this Friday edition of the Crushing Iron podcast.
Well, it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you.
It always is, man. That's why we started it, and then we'll continue to do so.
Well, that is the crux, right? It's like these are the conversations we are having normally. So it's like, hey, let's just buzz each other up every couple times a week and keep it going. And I think it does help us. I mean, I know it helps me to reground and look at different things all the time, and because it is a fun sport and it should be fun. I think that's ultimately what we're looking for, is like, hey, let's keep this fun. Let's keep triathlete fun again.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why we do it. Like, hopefully to be fun. So if you're out there and you're racing this weekend, have some fun. Remember why you're there. Remember that it should add something positive to your life, and that it should be good. And we wish you the best. Have fun. Good luck. Do the best you can. Leave the rest. Learn something about yourself, and then apply it to your training and how you approach things going forward. We promise a little more triathlon centered and centric next week for you.
No, we don't.
Yeah, we don't promise that. We don't promise anything because we don't know we're going to wake up and feel like talking about it on Monday, and that's fine. But we promise to, at least show up on Monday and do the best that we can and see how we feel and deliver as such.
Okay.
Good luck again.
Good luck. Ironman Muncie podcast is number 65.
There we go.
And I will link that in the show notes. I also, we don't have to talk about, but quickly, the Muncie swim course has been changed, and we got a lot of people doing that race, and big deal, huh?
Yeah, I mean, big deal.
I love what the race director said. He's not a big fan of change, but I'll give it a shot. And I agree. I mean, that always is kind of a tough swim. I don't know if this will make it easier necessarily, but there's bound to be some issues with the new swim course, as there always is with every swim course and everything. Nothing's perfect. So
yeah, it is. But guess what? It's still going to be around 1.2 miles. You're still going to have to swim it, and so is everybody else. So have fun. Treat it as such. Just do it. Stop bitching and moaning about it. Go out, have fun, enjoy yourself. It is still and will probably always be one of the safest, best run 70.3s in the U.S. It always has been. It probably always will be. Where else can you find 56 miles of basically closed traffic and perfect roads? Have some fun. Enjoy yourself. Find yourself hanging out after the race because there ain't nowhere else to go in Muncie. That is for sure. Yeah. But enjoy yourself. Again, if you can go to crushingiron.com and figure out all the things that we do, from gear to our club to swim analysis to our triathlon training camps. We'll try and link those in the show notes as well. We just released our 2020 camps for next year, and both of those camps are already halfway full. So I would not wait any longer on those. Then we also have information on our coaching and training packages. If you want to reach out to us directly, like many of you do, you can contact Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com, or you can always reach out to me, C26coach@gmail.com.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do you. Be free to be you out there today.
Yeah. Whatever that means.
Whatever that means to you. All right, buddy.
All right, dude. I'll see you next week.
See you, man.